PSIR. Okay, good. I'm Srinivas Sannidhanam. I offer this paper PSIR. And I'm proud to say that my student, she secured 54 rank in the results. And it was not her first time, because first time she secured 136. And she was not happy, because initially she wanted IFS, Foreign Service. Subsequently, she changed her mind. She wanted to be IAS. So 136 did not fetch her that rank. So she tried again, succeeded. But she was brilliant. It is not my greatness. Had she taken any other option also, she would have got the same rank. But I am very honest, because she had that effort, the hard work, more than hard work, smart work. She always had that in mind, yes, I can do this. I only guided her. That's what we can do. So we don't take the exam. We only guide the students. And as far as this paper is concerned, if you are from social science background, you know the significance of it. But most students I interact are from technical backgrounds. So I think the majority are technical, because I don't see any traditional graduation being offered anywhere. They are almost on the verge of winding up. We did graduation in bachelor's in Osmania University Nizam College. Then I went to JNU New Delhi to pursue my political science. So that's my bread and butter. So I teach PSIR, political science and international relations. So coming to, after this brief introduction, let me go through the paper. So as you all aware that this paper is a test of your hard work. So those who aspire to take this exam, one thing you should remember is it is not a test of your IQ. For example, if you take JEE, IITs and all, it's a test of your IQ. But this is not a test of your IQ. This is the most unfortunate thing. Unfortunate thing with respect to civil services examination is, it is not a test of your IQ. It is a test of your hard work. But they are choosing the best administrators. If they are choosing the best administrators, then in fact it should have been the test of your reasoning, problem solving. Because as an administrator, you are expected to solve a problem. But in the context of this, it is not exactly the test of reasoning. Test of reasoning is also there, but not everyone aspires to that. Because when you look at the pattern of the exam, irrespective of your backgrounds, with little effort, little preparation, in prelims or mains, 1/3 of the questions everyone can answer. Irrespective of your backgrounds, whether you are technical background or you are from arts background, science background, irrespective of the background, 1/3, whether in prelims or in mains, you can straight attempt. 1/3 of the questions, they are easy, relatively easy. You can easily answer. Particularly with prelims, the second 1/3 is the decider. Second 1/3 is the decider because in the second 1/3, there will be 2 answers right. You have to pick the right choice. Other 2 you can easily eliminate because you know. So this is to some extent test of your reasoning. You have to choose, you have to pick the right answer from the given options. So this is the decider. Those who can succeed in doing this second one-third, they are usually through. They clear the prelims. And the third one-third is the most difficult part because all 4 answers are right. So this is where your test of memory is. You have to memorize. You have to memorize every possibility. Sometimes they keep asking on patterns. Sometimes they keep changing the trend. So whichever you see, because all appear to be very similar, you have to pick the right one. If you have to pick the right one, your reasoning does not help. So it also tests your memory. That's the reason why many students ignore that one-third. Because UPSC prelims cutoff is never crossed more than 120. More than 120 means if you are comfortable with attempting 60 correct answers, you are through. Sometimes it varies from 40 to 60. Even 80 sometimes is a cutoff. That means you have the liberty of ignoring 60. Liberty of ignoring 60. Even if you attempt 40, you are through. But out of anxiety, what many students do is, they think anyway I am not clearing the exam. Let me attempt all. This is the folly that they make. So instead of attempting only what they know, when they try it for that one-third, the final one-third, they themselves self-defeat their purpose because of the negative marks. If you leave it there, even if you can solve 50, that means even others who are well prepared also can only solve 50. Because this exam is a level playing field. If it is difficult for you, at the same time it is difficult for everyone. Right? There is something they say that because even prelims is same for IFS, Forest Service. Even for Forest Service, prelims is same. But the practice, because of that, they argue that 30 science questions will be there. It is not true. 30 science questions are also from current affairs. Basically from science and technology. It is not testing your science background. It is only testing your awareness. And all those who are veterans in the sense those who already appeared for this exam in the past, you find another new trend. Prior to 2014, the nature of questions that were asked, particularly in prelims or mains, they were very contemporary. So if you have last 1 year of thorough understanding, then possibly you could have answered this. If you had a thorough understanding of last 1 year, right? So possibly by updating yourself with respect to current affairs, like what we call India Yearbook. So there were questions that appeared from India Yearbook. Suddenly there was a change. And UPSC went back by more than 2 years. Instead of asking current affairs, they started asking questions from 2 years, 3 years back. Then I thought maybe because of the regime change, because there is a change of government at the union level. So new restructuring. If there is a change of government, everything restructures. So in the process, new set of people might have occupied. New set of people are hired to set your paper. New set of people are hired to evaluate your paper. So whenever papers are set or evaluated, don't expect that it is done by anyone outside. They are all university academicians. The one who sets the paper is a university academician teaching post-graduation at the university level. Any paper. So they are asked to submit their questions. Please. They are asked to submit their questions, and all the questions are assorted, and they handpick and give you some questions. So whenever they set the question, they have to also identify the key. Key in the the sense from where they can locate the answer. Because we have seen social sciences, one problem with social sciences is it is not like exact science. There is nothing like this is true and this is false. In social sciences, you don't find true and false. In social sciences, we only form opinions. Understand? There is nothing like true, there is nothing like false. And every opinion is a valid opinion. You cannot discount an opinion stating that this is irrelevant. That is how I understand things. That is how social sciences are studied. And that's the reason why there is no one perspective, one theory, one idea. We have multiple ideas, multiple theories, multiple perspectives, and everything having its own justification. This is how you understand social sciences. Then how to set questions? This is the problem. If opinions matter, then how do you set the questions? And that's the reason why they are focusing on test of memory. Because if they give the option of choosing, I might choose something different because in my opinion that appears to be true. So to overcome this problem, for the prelims they have to identify the source of the key. The source of the key. For example, if I set the paper, then the source of the key I set India Yearbook. I have picked up this question from India Yearbook on so and so page, on so and so line, there is a key provided. The answer is there. So this is a standard. So going with this standard, everyone complies with that. Got it? So that's the reason why questions are from India Yearbook. Otherwise, if you go with newspapers, they are all opinions. Opinions expressed by the respective columnist. So you need not accept it, or you may oppose it. Got it? So this problem is there with all social sciences. Similarly, even with respect to mains, if I am setting the question as an academician from a university, right? When I set the question, I also give what I think is the appropriate answer. So I identify certain points. So I want the students to highlight those points. So what is identified as a model answer? So whenever I set a paper, I also give a model answer. Because opinions differ. If you are able to cover these points, your answer is done. So if it has to be general, because points, model answer cannot be particular. Model answer cannot be what I think. Model answer will have to be what everyone thinks. Model answer cannot be what I think. Model answer can only be what everyone thinks. So the points that are there are general points. That's the reason why when you go through the UPSC question paper, you don't find any particular question, any subjective question where you write. So if they ask you a subjective question, immediately it will be followed with a question mark stating that comment. So you have the freedom to write your own opinions only when the question comes with comment. Otherwise, they define means give a definition, describe facts, substantiate with facts. Because theory building is two types. One is descriptive and explanatory. Another is prescriptive and value oriented. So for prescriptive, you cannot describe. You have to analyze. For factual based understanding, you have to describe. So question says describe. Invariably, you have to put one or two facts to substantiate your answer. If the question says define, you have to provide a definition. At least one definition of what is being asked. If the question says analyze, then you should be in a position to break it into parts. Break it into parts and reconnect. That is how analysis is done. So a phenomena is broken into different parts and reconnect it. And if the question says critically analyze, then you have to look it from the critical. That means you have to criticize. And if the question says comment, you are free to express your opinion. That means the question is subjective. It is asking you to write in your own words what you think. Got it? If the question says illustrate, you are expected to provide an example. Whenever the term comes illustrate, what is expected is you have to provide an example. So this is how the questions are framed. And if you don't answer in the same aspect, then you don't tend to get marks, because model answer expects this. Model answer expects this. Model answer expects a definition. Model answer expects a definition, then follow it up. If it is a defined question, then follow it up with respect to some sort of a definition and elaborate the definition. And particularly with respect to paper 2, not in paper 1, you have to also identify some sort of a way forward. Paper 2, not in paper 1. Way forward, because particularly with respect to India, any question that appears with respect to India centric, then you have to also identify the way forward. How you propose that India should move ahead. So, or how it is advantageous to India. So whenever you talk about way forward, you should always highlight how it is advantageous to India. Got it? So that's the reason why when you look at these two papers, particularly paper 1 is very absorbing because it has all the critical concepts. Not only critical concepts, it has huge literature. Huge pile-up of literature. Right? So any one standard book is must. Any one standard book, I don't say that you should only read. So whichever is convenient, whichever you are free in terms of comprehension, that you can study. So once you study a basic standard book with respect to paper 1, and India-centric, you need to understand the Constitution. If you understand Constitution, then it is more than enough. And as far as the governance part, highlight what every regime had been. Highlight what every regime had been, what every regime is trying to promote, what are their policies. Because in politics, you have this policy, and there is a lot of debate going on whether freebie should be permitted or not. Even social media is engaged. If social media is engaged, then you will get a question. So first of all, you should question what is freebie. Right? What is freebie? How to understand freebie? What someone considers a freebie may be a necessity for others. Right? So your perception of freebie may completely change. So don't subscribe to social media, because they are all of some comfortable, they have all reached some comfort zone in their life. So they try to look at things in the perspective of their own comfort, because they ignore the vast majority of the people still live below the poverty line. So this is where the Constitution identified India to be a welfare state. So welfare it cannot ignore. The directive principles itself identified that India is a welfare state, and it is a responsibility, it is a moral duty of the state to promote welfare. So as far as governance is concerned, you should also focus in terms of identifying or making a distinction between development and welfare. If you understand the difference between development and welfare, then governance is a cakewalk. Right? Don't get confused. development is not same as welfare. They are not synonymous. Both words are not synonymous. Both differ. So welfare is usually some sort of a ad hoc arrangement. One time. You don't get it again and again. But development is a process. A process to help realize your potential. It could be the potential of the economy, or it could be individual potential. Right? So whenever you write about welfare, for example, we had, who was that Santosh Kumar in Nalgonda, who was killed during Galwan War? Santosh Babu, right? So the family is provided with a welfare. So it is not repeated again and again. His wife got a group 1 job, a plot, and a money to compensate. So it is one time. It is not extended again and again. So it does not reach out to any other member in the family. So from that point of view, welfare is always identified with one. Whereas development is not. It's a process. A process to realize your own potential. So governance should target both. It has to reconcile welfare and development. If it cannot ignore either of them. So where do you identify freebies? Whether you identify freebies as part of welfare, as some argue that it is a hindrance to development. What many people argue is freebie is a major setback to India's development. Right? So either option. So you have to create your own opinions, how you justify. So these are the questions that are asked. So paper 1 is more comfortable. There is a lot of literature. So any one standard reading is fine. And don't go with these toppers. They never tell you. If you talk to any topper, he will only say that for India-centric, you need Lakshmikant, that's enough, the Bible. But does Lakshmikant help you to write more than 100 marks paper? The paper for GS2 is also 250. And Lakshmikant at best helps you in writing 100, the constitution part. How about the governance part? There are 100 marks governance. There is no way Lakshmikant can identify and help you. And because governance is such a vast thing, which cannot be compiled into one book. Right? So Lakshmikant is only sufficient for government, not for governance. It is only sufficient for the structure part, not the process part. How effective the government is governance. So you don't expect. And that's the reason why you don't find majority of the things like how environment policy impact other sectors of development in India. If a question comes, how environmental policy will impact other sectors of development in India. So you don't find any specific book. So you have to be little imaginative. Focusing on current affairs, what is happening. Try to understand the sectors, various sectors. So when you say different sectors in the economy, you should focus both in terms of urban sector and rural sector. And what are the policies that are targeted, or who are the targeted beneficiaries under the policies. Because that is to help them realize themselves. Every policy aims at helping them to realize. So from that point of view, so Lakshmikant will not be complete. It may help you to write on 100 marks. I don't say Lakshmikant is not so significant. It is a guide that helps you in terms of an easy understanding of the Constitution. So beyond that, it does not serve your purpose. So if you are preparing, you have to prepare your own notes with respect to the governance part, and without which you will not score more than 100. Right? Similarly, when you look at the paper 2 part, paper 2 is also split into 3. Section A has 2 parts and section B India-centric. Section A has both comparative politics followed by international politics. So comparative politics is comparing different domestic political environments. Comparative politics is comparing different domestic political environments. Whereas international politics is trying to understand the relations among the state. So both are not same. So comparative politics is different from international politics. Because comparative politics idea is to identify and understand how domestic political environment operates. Right? So why comparison? Because post Second World War, new political systems evolved or new political societies emerged as independent. And they are all experiencing different levels of modernization. This is how the comparison came. So modernization theory. So initially everyone accepted that all those traditional societies like India, which acquired independence in 1947, we are not so modern. So we have to treat the path of development, modernization. Here development means modernization. Society should modernize. If society should modernize, then what should we follow? There has to be certain standards to follow. This is how comparative came. So they try to identify that Europe is more developed, more modern. So every other country that acquired independence should follow Europe. If you follow Europe, you will also develop. And this appeared to be a universal idea. But within 2 decades, they realized every society is unique. You cannot follow other societies. Which was highlighted with the successful Iranian Revolution. So things started changing dramatically. So the theories of modernization, development, everything started collapsing. So including comparison. Even comparative politics has come to an end. Because you cannot have comparison between 2 identically different. They are not identical. They are exposed to different historical context. So how can you have comparison? So by discarding comparison, they brought in multiple modernities. Every society is modern. If every society is modern, then where is the comparison? So India is also modern. That is how we try to identify ourselves as New India today. Repeatedly, this word is used in political jargon, particularly after 2014, that we are New India. New India represents that we are not traditional, but we are also modern. Got it? So modern India or New India is what we try to understand. So there is no comparison today, but that is their part of the syllabus. Comparative politics. But international politics, yes, that is something that you have to. International politics, when you talk about international politics, one thing you should always remember is they are all territory and sovereignty specific. All international politics are territory and sovereignty specific. If it is territory, we call it geography. Sovereignty, power, geopolitics. All international politics are dominated by geopolitics, geography, which represents the territory. Sovereignty, representing the power. So all international politics are geopolitics, where each state trying to maximize its own interest. Each state trying to maximize its own interest because you are in competition. Geopolitics deal with competition. Right? So international politics, starting from, say, 1648, the formation of the modern state, till the end of Cold War, We are dominated with one phase of politics, that is geopolitics. Because of geopolitics, we were exposed to war, including two world wars. Right? So the First World War was an economic war, trying to capture new markets because of industrialization. And the Second World War is a cultural war, trying to contain fascism. We had two wars within a span of 15 to 20 years. One was an economic war. The other is cultural war. Right? Second World War is a cultural war. First World War, economic war. Post 1990, international politics are dominated by geoeconomics, globalization. So geoeconomics is the opposite of geopolitics. Territory and sovereignty remain insignificant. Territory, sovereignty remain insignificant because we have shared territory, shared sovereignty. So you move towards shared territory and shared sovereignty. That is how we establish these international regimes today. International politics are governed by established regimes, counter-terror regime, climate change regime, counter-terror, climate change, non-proliferation regime, right? WTO regime. So when you talk in terms of regime, that means that represents some sort of a global governance. A global governance which is not representing geopolitics, but geoeconomics. Because of shared sovereignty, shared territory. Got it? And in the 21st century, geoeconomics gave way to geostrategic interest. In the 21st century, geoeconomics gave way to geostrategic interest. So strategic is a very confusing term in politics. Usually when we try to understand strategic, it is primarily identified with security, state security. Whenever you talk about strategic interest, we are talking about state security. State security as one of the important dimensions in strategic interest. But it has become a commonly used term today. So strategy does not truly represent state security. Instead, strategy started dominating scarcity. Instead of state security, it started representing scarcity. If you don't have, say, uranium, so you are at a strategically disadvantaged position. So strategic is not with state security. This change has come because post-1990, international politics are not only confined to state security, but one important shift has brought is human security. All along, state only considered itself to secure. But post-1990, it is not state security that is important, but what matters is human security. So human security brought this right of responsibility among the states. So if the state is violating your own human rights, if the state is violating its own people's rights, then there will be international intervention under humanitarian intervention. For example, this has made state more responsible towards its own people. Why? Because state is not the sole power now. It is not the security of the state that demands. The human security demands. So we moved to human security and human development by 1990s. So the idea of governance also shifted. This facilitated this establishing of regimes. This facilitated the establishment of regimes. It is not state security that is dominating, but human security. So state is there for the people, not people for the state. State is for the people, not people for the state. If you think people are for the state, then people are insignificant. State is important. So you only focus on state security. But if you think state is for people, right? Then state is insignificant. If you cannot protect the lives of the people, then whether you stay or you don't stay, that hardly matters. Because no state is created for the people, right? Not people are not created for the state, right? Another example. People make constitution. Constitution does not make people. When people come together, they make the constitution. It is not constitution which shapes the people. That's not possible. Got it? So similarly, it is not state interest, but human security. State security is replaced by human security. But with the spread of global terror, we started reinventing the state. With the spread of global terror, we started reinventing the state. Now the state is more powerful than it was. That's the reason why you find an authoritarian state across the globe. We have the laws identified like UPA in India, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Anyone on suspicion can be taken into custody. And you will not even get bail for at least 5 to 6 years. And you have to fight the might of the state. That means you have to prove your innocence. State will not prove your guilt. On the contrary, you have to prove your innocence. So these laws, the presence of these laws represent that what we have in 21st century is a authoritarian state. And this is not specific to any one country. It has global reach. Look at Putin. Look at Xi Jinping. Right? An example, classic example for authoritarian state. And they are also amending their own constitution to remain in power forever. Amending their own constitution to remain in power forever. So this is a global phenomenon. Got it? So paper 2, you have less literature because you are dealing with aspects which occur in the past 6 months, 1 year. So there is hardly any literature that is published. So you have the freedom to score high in paper 2. In the absence of any standard literature, you have the freedom to score very high because your opinions matter. But in order to form your opinions, you need to study paper 1 perfectly. If you have sound grip on paper 1, paper 2 is cakewalk. Because if you understand concept, you are the application of the concept in paper 2. Got it? So paper 2 is scoring because the concept that we employ in the understanding of paper 2 are already learnt in paper 1. So if you understand section A of paper 1, that means half of the paper you understand. Because same concepts are identified and applied in paper 2. For example, power. Power is what is central to international politics. So power you study in paper 1, section A, as a concept, critical concept in political science. Similarly, we have state as a critical concept in political science. In fact, the paper 1, section A begins with, after approaches method, you find state directly. After state, immediately they identified justice. Why you need state? Why you need state? To realize justice. So justice has occupied the central concept. After justice, it identified equality. Because this is how modern societies are identified. Historical societies, they may be hierarchical. Hierarchy was justified. That is how slavery was also justified. But modern societies, you cannot even expect slavery as a legal justified institution. So modern societies are all equal societies. So equality. So if you want equality, then you need rights. So the very next concept that it included was rights. Rights help in terms of restoring equality. And what are rights? They are socially recognized. society recognizes. If society recognizes, state has to maintain it. If state gives you rights, state can always take away the rights. That's the reason why the stress is on societal recognition. If society recognizes rights, then state is forced to maintain it. If state gives you, it can always take away. So if you want to have these rights maintained, then you need democracy. The next concept. So the next concept that we have is democracy. Even democracy is not something new. It has more than 2000 years history. Democracy was also practiced during the Greek period. Even in the context of India, when you deal with Buddha, you find Janapadas. Janapadas means republics, people's republics. That means their democracy was practiced historically for more than 2000 years. But how you understand democracy in the modern context is completely different. As it arises again, particularly in the context of social contract theory, it appeared to be both protective and developmental. Democracy was considered to be protective and developmental. Protect your property. This is how social contract focused. John Locke in particular, the basis for his contract is protecting natural rights, where he recognized right to property as part of the natural right. And developmental, because it helps in terms of developing your potentials. As you keep practicing democracy, that helps in terms of your thinking ability. Why I should vote? Whom should I vote? Right? When I start thinking, it also helps in terms of improving my ability to think. Or what we call thinking is identified with reason and rationality. In politics, we identify thinking with reason and rationality. So it helps in terms of our rationality. But modern context of democracy is not protective and developmental. What we practice today is pluralist and elitist. The democracy that we practice today is pluralist and elitist. You have multiple players, but all multiple players are from elite background. You have no option to choose other than Modi or Amit Shah, as long as they continue to remain in power. You have no more option to choose other than Rahul Gandhi, as long as they continue to remain in power. You don't have any option to choose other than Jagan Mohan Reddy or KCR. Elitist and pluralist. This is how modern democracy is. Right? So depending upon the nature of the democracy, all other concepts are dependent. Depending upon the nature of democracy, all other concepts are dependent. Right? Your rights, your equality, your justice, your state, all other aspects, concepts are interdependent on the idea of democracy. What sort of a democracy is in practice? Right? And to identify democracy, you need to identify how power is located. So we have power, authority, legitimacy, and hegemony. How the state power acquires legitimacy. How the state power acquires legitimacy. Legitimacy means acceptance. Why should I obey the law? Why should I obey the law of the land? Why should I obey demonetization? Because the decision is backed by the force of law. If I disobey, I am liable for punishment. If I disobey the law, I am liable for punishment. Only when I obey the law, I am considered to be a lawful citizen. I am considered to be a law-abiding citizen. And law is never promotional. Law is always preventive and prohibitory. You don't come across any law which is promotional in nature. You don't come across any law which is promotional in nature. Law is always preventive and prohibitory. But what is law? What is law? Law is nothing but something that evolved through society as a custom. Customs and conventions are the basis for law. And that's the reason why we have a debate on Uniform Civil Code. Uniform Civil Code is something that has evolved through society in terms of different practices. Every religious community has its own set of rules, customs, conventions, practices, which acquire moral justification. And that is law. And this law is recognized as law because the state recognizes it so. Anyone breaking the law is punished by the state. So Uniform Civil Code is something similar to that. It is something that is practiced by the different communities across India. Now what the state wants to do is establish a law. So when you establish a law, you are in fact, it is preventive or prohibitory. It is never promotional. To give another example, you can only have a law prohibiting untouchability. You cannot have a law promoting touchability. You cannot have a law promoting touchability. You can only have a law prohibiting untouchability. So law is never promotional. So law is something, right? This is to give you another example. The British Parliament. The British Parliament argues that the people are free to do anything and everything which is not prohibited by the law. Another example. So the law is only intended to make prohibitory or preventive, but never promotional. Everything is permitted which is not prohibited. Everything is permitted. You can do everything or anything which is not prohibited by law. So law is always identified in terms of its negative sense, not the positive sense. So the positive sense is dominated by your morality. That's the reason why where law ends, morality begins. Where law ends, morality begins. So the end of the law is the beginning of morality. So society is not always governed by law. Societies are also governed by morality. So if you find the end of the law, that means there is a beginning of morality. So the Uniform Civil Code, in fact, represents the established morality among different communities in the society. So if you want to establish a law, right? So morality can be promotional. Morality can be promotional, but law is not. Understand? Right? So there will be a growing debate with respect to Uniform Civil Code. So you can expect one question also. So that's the reason why I thought it is apt to discuss here. Because yesterday only I saw a news headlines where it stated that in the monsoon session of Parliament, they are likely to adopt a bill on Uniform Civil Code. Right? So if that happens, you can expect a question for at least 1 to 2 years. Not only in terms of Uniform Civil Code, but also in terms of the debate between morality and legality. Whether a law should be promotional in nature, or do we have any law that is promotional in nature, or it should be left to the moral conscience of the society. Is moral conscience of the society sufficient ground for state not to intervene? So the debate cannot go beyond that. Because when you talk about Uniform Civil Code, we have multiple practices. The practices differ from region to region, district to district also. So at best what Uniform Civil Code can intervene is with respect to your marriage and property. Beyond that it cannot, because within Hinduism you have different sects like Shaivites, Vaishnavites, who have differences in terms of their own practices. So you cannot come with one solution. Even Hindus will oppose it. So at best, it can only be limited to property and marriage. Because majority community practice monogamy. And the minorities have the freedom to practice polygamy. So maybe the Uniform Civil Code is targeting to establish monogamy. So with respect to marriage, monogamy. And with respect to property, inheritance. Because in most societies and communities, we don't have gender justice. Because our society privileges men over women. We are a patrilineal society. We are a patrilineal society. That is the reason why we only make significance with respect to the elder son of the family, historically, not the other sons. That's the reason why you only find the history of Rama, not the other brothers. The history concludes with Lavakusha. You don't find, because society is patrilineal. The eldest son is more important. That is how history is created. Right? Do you know the children of Lakshmana, Bharata, Shatrugna? There is no reference. There is no reference because it is not that they are insignificant. But historically, we remain patrilineal or patrimonial societies. Patrilineal or patrimonial societies. And that's the reason why women did not share equal property rights. And what the law now wants to guarantee is even the women with equal property rights. So like son, daughter, both are equal as far as inherited property is concerned. As far as acquired property is concerned, I have the freedom to give it to anyone. If I earn a property, I have the freedom to give it to anyone. That's my concise. But if I inherit a property, then even my children also acquire equal rights. So it is not the men or the male child who occupies a prominent position, but even the female child acquires equal right. This is how the practices are. Now, Uniform Civil Code legitimizes the right of women in acquiring equal right. Beyond that, it cannot venture into anything. If it ventures into anything, it will create a chaos in society. Because the practices differ. The age-old practices differ from one community to another community. Even within larger Hindu society, we have differences. And that's the reason why India is always identified in unity in diversity, not unity in uniformity. India is always identified with unity in diversity, but not unity in uniformity. So if you focus unity and uniformity, right, through law, which may remain preventive and prohibitory, but not promotional. Clear? And coming back to this paper, political science and international relations, this is how it is identified, but most students call it PSIR. And before you do with PSIR, you should also know what politics is. This is very fundamental. Without understanding the headline, we cannot understand the subject matter. So I gave a brief understanding about how the concepts operate. But what exactly we mean by politics? Politics means it's like a raw material. Raw material which constitutes into a society. And it becomes political when the raw material helps us in organizing the society. So there is a difference between politics and political. Politics is like a raw material, and political, the form the raw material take. A definite form, or they form or they organize themselves into a form, that is what we call political. So politics and political. Politics is like anarchy, stateless, lawless, right? And you form into a state or into a law, it becomes political. Got it? So political refers to some sort of a lawfully organized society. So lawfully means you identify certain institutions as part of the society. So in the absence of law, in the absence of institutions, it is politics. In the absence of law, in the absence of institution, it is politics. So politics is always dynamics. Politics is always dynamic because if you are not happy with the arrangement, political arrangement, we can always think in terms of creating a new arrangement. Politics is dynamic because if you are not happy with the existing arrangement, existing political arrangement, we can always think in terms of recreating a new arrangement. And to symbolize this, we have ideologies. To symbolize various arrangements, political arrangements, we have another dimension, that is ideology. So we have ideologies like liberal ideology, Marxist ideology. So liberalism, when you talk about liberalism, there are two things with liberalism. One is liberalism identifies freedom of individual. Liberalism identifies freedom of individual. Liberalism identifies protection to private property. Property and individual freedom are the essence of liberalism. Whenever you come across the word liberal, two things matter. One, autonomy, freedom of the individual. Two, protection of property, private property, or recognition to private property. If you have recognition to private property and there is a freedom of individual, you call it liberal. And the other ideology, countering liberalism, because liberalism has come with differences within the offshoots of liberalism. So other ideologies include feminism, Gandhiism. So feminism is an ideology that represents an extension of liberalism, because ultimately what women want is freedom. And to counter this, we have Marxism. Marxism does not stand for individual freedom, but Marxism deals with collective property, not individual ownership of property. It believes in community ownership of property. Marxism believes in community ownership of property, and it also believes in community realizing its potential. It is not individual. So community is centric. Community ownership of private property or collective ownership of property and community realizing its own potential is Marxism. Right? So Marxism is a different political arrangement which focus not on individual but community. Individual is important, but only as part of a community. So it does not recognize freedom of individual per se, but recognize realizing the collective potential of society, realizing the collective potential of the community. The end goals of both are same. The end of both is individual freedom only. But the political arrangement to realize liberalism and Marxism follow different trends. One follows the individual, which believes in the ability of individual. Liberalism believes in the ability of the individual, and Marxism believes in the ability of the community. Community as a moralizing agent. Community is a moralizing agent in Marxism. Individual, free from any moral conditionalities, is liberalism. If individual is set free, he can do wonders. If individual is set free, can do wonders, is liberalism. Community as a moralizing agent is Marxism. Only as part of community, humans become moral. Right? This is not something Marx picked up on his own, because there is nothing original about Marx. All his ideas are borrowed from liberalism only. Community as a moralizing agent is something that Plato talked about. So you find a correlationship from Plato to Hegel in Marx. Plato was the first one to talk about community as a moralizing agent. So that is the same idea he represented. There is nothing extraordinary about Marx, right? But he developed an ideology. So how a different political arrangement can help in terms of emancipating humanity. So the end goal of liberalism and Marxism is human emancipation. How humans can realize their own potentials. Emancipation means how humans can realize their potential. And emancipation is a word that has come to help individuals overcome the fear of nature. Human emancipation evolved to help individuals overcome the fear of nature, because prior to industrialization, nature dominated us. Nature remained a big mystery even today. Even today, we cannot expect when earthquake will occur. Even today, we cannot expect with all the technology at our disposal when tsunami can take place. Right? It is like with all the mathematics and statistics at our command, we cannot predict what will happen to stock market today. Uncertainty. But nature appeared to be not only uncertain, but nature appeared to be a mystery. But with increasing science and technology, we mastered the nature. We mastered the nature. Nature is no longer something that remains mystery. We started dominating the nature. This domination of nature is what we identify as human emancipation. Human emancipating from the dominance of nature. So once you started thinking in terms of emancipation or overcoming the domination of nature, what we identified is nothing is given. Nothing is natural. Everything can be recreated. Society, state are not natural, but artificial. If you are not happy with a particular society, we can always recreate it. If you are not happy with a particular state, we can always recreate it. So this is a very powerful idea that emerged out of this idea of emancipation. So nothing is given, nothing is granted, everything is subject to change. So we can organize a political arrangement according to our choice. According to our choice. If you are not happy with the particular arrangement, say parliamentary system, we can conveniently create or move towards a presidential system. Or we can have a new political arrangement which suits our purpose. This is the idea of emancipation. This is the idea of emancipation that helped to liberate the individual from nature's domination. Right? So beyond this concept, we have nothing to learn. Nothing to learn in this paper. Because what is followed in Indian and Western thought is how they try to utilize these concepts. How they try to utilize these concepts. Got it? So this is a glimpse of the paper in terms of its two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. And the concept that you study in paper 1, section A, dominate the whole paper. Dominate the whole paper. Even Indian politics, they are trying to create a political arrangement which helps in nurturing democracy. Why we need a constitution? We need a constitution to revolutionize the society. Because at the time of Indian independence, we had a stagnating society. So new ideas have to be brought into the society. So Constitution tried to do that. Constitution tried to bring new ideas into the society. That's what the preamble stands for. Preamble incorporates the ideas that represent or reflect in the Constitution. Right? Have any questions you can ask? Yes.
Marxism. Find out the ideology stratified or is economy a result of political?
So, good question. Actually, economy was never a separate branch. It was always part of politics. Even Adam Smith, David Ricardo, they all talked about political economy. They never separated. But the idea of political economy was a laissez-faire economy without any state interference. So they tried to identify that economic activity should be separated, should be in the hands of a private individual without any state interference or without any community interference. So that's what even Adam Smith talked about, invisible hand. So they believe that market has its own market maintains its own equilibrium. JB law, supply creates its own demand. If you have production, the production will create its own demand. But it was not true in all cases, which resulted into a Great Depression. And the Great Depression, in fact, necessitated state intervention. So we find J.M. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, coming with macroeconomics. Otherwise, economics was only micro, under classical and neoclassical. Only under Great Depression, we find macroeconomy. And today, under globalization, we also try to identify ourselves as a laissez-faire state. Minimum interference of state into economy. But the difference between the past and the present is, here, the state is vested with the responsibility to maintain macroeconomy, particularly inflation. Right? Which was not the case in the past. So, to that extent, we can say political economy. Political economy is something that is a significant aspect. Otherwise, how do you account for demonetization? State intervention. Even welfare is nothing but state intervention. If state intervention intervenes into economy and society, we call it welfare. Right? So politics and economy cannot be separated in the present. But to understand this, I told you about comparative politics. I said comparison in terms of domestic political system. Right? And here, interestingly, we had two approaches. One is political sociology, other is political economy. So to highlight this point, political sociology focused on the input side. Input side means how demands are raised. How demands are raised on the system, political system, is identified as input. And what is the impact of the decision that the state makes is output. For example, there is a demand for EWS, economically weaker section reservations. Economically weaker section reservations has only come from those people who are opposed to reservation, because they think that they are left out. So they wanted some sort of a reservation. Now when you extend EWS reservation, they form the support base to the system. That means input. They are the ones who provide input, support to the system. So the decisions of the system are outputs. Right? So political economy will only study the impact of outputs. Who is the real beneficiary? It is not studying the input. Input is studied by sociology. How support is garnered? How support is garnered for uniform civil code? Input. What is the impact of the decision? Who is the real beneficiary? Who stands to gain and who stands to lose? output, political economy. This is the simplest way to understand both sociology and economy, because political decision influence both. Politics influence society, politics influence economy. So if politics is influenced by society, we call input. If politics is influencing economy, we call it output. The impact of political decisions on economy is out. Because of demonetization, if you study who stands to benefit, did it really serve to end fake currency? Does it really serve to prevent funding to the terrorist? Right? So when you examine that means political economy. Or who stands to be benefited is political economy. Otherwise, we are not dealing with directly into economics. So we are only confining ourselves in terms of maintaining inflation, rate of inflation. If it goes outbounds, then it may in fact lead to the collapse of the political arrangement. That is where politics is conscious. So politics and politics is, remember, like a raw material. Political, the form it takes. And that's the reason why there was a question asked, politics is architectonic. Because you are trying to build a new political arrangement. Building a new political arrangement is nothing like an architect. So if you are not happy, we can create or recreate another political arrangement. This is what politics helps us. So only politics as a dynamics help in stabilizing political arrangement. Otherwise not. Right? Similarly, whether political is a science or art, this is also something you have to understand. Science means it is a science. Science is nothing but something that can be identified by observable knowledge. Something that can be seen is science. What you see is science. But not all scientific understanding is true. We always see sun rising in the east, but it is not true. Because sun neither sets nor rises. That's the true science. But to our observation, it appears to be true. So from that point of view, whatever data you collect, whatever data you have in possession, based on that, if you arrive at a decision, then it is science. Like UCC, you are seeking public opinion. So based on the larger public opinion, the data that is collected, if the state arrives at a decision, then it is science. Because the decision is based on some empirical evidence. Some evidence which is subjected to testing again and again. Because you have collected some data. Based on the collected data, you are making a choice, science. But it is an art when you are arriving at a decision creatively. Politics is both science and art. Science, you try to base your judgment on given facts, given evidence. It's an art because you have to arrive at a decision not to hurt anyone. It has to be a creative decision without hurting the sentiments of any of the community. Got it? So creative decision making is art. And politics is both. A science based on observable phenomena, an art in terms of arriving at a decision. So political science can also be political art. How you make the decision. Whether you rely on the material given as evidence, observable material, or you are coming with a creatively identified judgment. Either way. Right? So PSIR. IR, as I said, international relations or international politics. They began with geopolitics, moved to geoeconomics. Now we find geopolitics dominating as geostrategic interest. geopolitics dominating as geostrategic interest, either in terms of Ukraine war, Syrian crisis, Yemen crisis, or anywhere crisis in the world. It is a geopolitics phenomena under geostrategic interest. Or even India conducting G20 is a India's strategic interests that are represented. That's the reason why I said strategic interest is mostly identified with security. But when it comes to India, it is not limited to security alone, right? It represents scarcity. If we have any scarce resource, then we call it strategic. Because India has entered into strategic partnership agreement with more than 30 countries, now more than 40 countries. It does not mean with every country we are part of a security arrangement. Strategic includes even your economic scarcity. Right? So don't go with the words, because words acquire different meaning according to the context. So international politics are identified in terms of geopolitics, geoeconomics, geostrategic. So we have theories supporting that. And they are also part of our paper 1, section A, liberalism, Marxism, how to understand Indian international politics, liberal perspective Marxism. Or power, the idea of power, concept of power, whether it is power over or power to. Power over represents domination. Usually, the power that we try to understand is negative. Negative power is always talking in terms of dominating others. But Michael Foucault, and Hannah Arendt argue that power is not negative but positive. The idea of power is not negative but positive. So Foucault talks about disciplinary power and argues that power is not in the hands of anyone. No one is actually holding power. It is there in circulation everywhere. For example, you are all here. In next 2 years, if you don't succeed in your life and get into something productive, there is a question that would be haunting you every time. What is that you are doing? Wherever you go. You are confronted with one question wherever you go. What is that you are doing? So this question haunts you day in and day out. Unless you get into some sort of a productive environment. So wherever you go, people out of nowhere, they'll ask you one question. What is that you are doing? So this is what he calls disciplinary power. Society enforcing discipline so that every one of you should get into production. Similarly, even Hannah Arendt talks about power positively. She says that power is not in the hands of any individual. If you go and try to protest on the road, you will be pulled out. But if 1,000 people gather, you are heard. So where did this power come from? So she argues that power is in concert, C-O-N-C-E-R-T. That means in collective. So it is not wielded by anyone. It is there in the group. As long as the group remains, the power remains. Once you disperse, the power disperses. Right? So power also is not always identified. So if power is identified with domination, then we talk it about in terms of realism in international politics, where everything is identified in terms of domination. But if power is identified with production or cooperation, then Hannah Arendt, power is not for idealism. Power is not for conflict, but power is for cooperation. International politics. So there is nothing we don't learn from the concept. If you understand the concept well, the paper is a cakewalk. I tell you, this paper can be understood in 1 month if you know the concept. Thereafter, you are developing your own understanding of the paper. If you know the basics, there it ends. High scoring. Paper 1 is not so, because too much of literature, standard literature is there, until unless you read one standard book. I don't ever suggest to read high-end books, but basics. For example, Western thought, Sukhbir Singh, 2-volume book is there. Lucid and good to understand. Instead, if you have this Ramaswamy and Subrato Mukherjee, it's the language is little tough to comprehend. The ideas are little tough to comprehend. So it comes with little academic orientation. But Sukhbir Singh, the same idea represented in very lucid form. Right? Same with Indian thought. Indian thought. Because Indian thought is all centered around anti-colonial struggle. You don't find any developments in Indian thought after Buddha. There is a long gap because India treated the path of spirituality, whereas the Western thought focused on materiality. Materiality means economics. Spirituality means religion. So Indian thought is grounded in spirituality. That's the reason why we did not advance industrially. Whereas Western focused on materiality, economic. So they advanced industrially. Even today, we try to identify ourselves as Vishwaguru in terms of spirituality, not in terms of materiality. We never claim to be global power in terms of our material existence, in terms of our economic power or military power. We wanted to lead the world as Vishwaguru in terms of spiritual ideas. Got it? Prime Minister repeatedly makes, even in G20, Vishwaguru concept. What is the idea of Vishwaguru? We are not claiming that we are a global economic or military superpower. We are claiming that we are destined to be a global power in terms of our spirituality, like yoga, a symbolic representation of India's spiritual power. Spreading yoga into an international event marked in the calendar. So this is how we are trying to place ourselves. We are never trying to place ourselves as a power. So this is where India's, unrealistic assumptions. Because if you want to dominate the world, you need to first you need to produce your own security. You cannot be dependent on others for your security like Rafale, importing Rafale. You should be in a position to produce your own security. When you attain that status of producing your own security, then you can dictate world. That is how America. Because America was the first one to produce its own security with the invention of atom bomb. Right? We are far behind in terms of our defense. We are far behind in terms of our economy. We are only 3 trillion economy. China and India had the same beginning. And we introduced economic reforms 10 years apart. China introduced in 80, India 90. But China succeeded to reach 18 trillion economy. We just reached 3 trillion. But we had the potential. We have the potential to reach China, surpass China. For that, what we need is not spirituality, materiality. You need to innovate. You need to economically innovate and improve your own productive resources. If you want to attain the global #1 position to surpass America or India, because America is a 25 trillion economy. China is the second, 18 trillion economy. We have 2 other powers, Japan and Germany, ahead of us. So if India succeeds in crossing 5 trillion economy, we would be #3 in the world. That means still there is a big gap. 25 trillion, 18 trillion, then 5 trillion. So to bridge that gap, you need to focus not on spiritual superiority, but material superiority or economic superiority. Spirituality is fine, right? This is how Nehru tried to project India. Because at the time of Indian independence, Nehru had the ambition of projecting India as a global power. Neither we were an economic power nor a military power. So Nehru tried to identify India as a civilizational power. So he tried to identify India as a civilizational power and claim India's unique position in the world as one of the leading powers in terms of civilizational superiority. And we still continue with the same idea. Even though we remain critical about Nehru, Modi, but as far as ideas are concerned, it's nothing but a continuation. India as a Vishwaguru in terms of its spiritual power. That means civilizational power, not in terms of material power. Clear? Any more questions? Yes.
Engineer by background. Okay, while listening to you, sense that you have a lot of liberal thought. So in this span of, let's say, 1 year, can I develop that thought? Can I raise this paper? I understand the concepts. The subject wise, it's great because you get to learn about the society, the politics.
Not only that, this paper helps you in exceptional writing of essay. Because there are 2 questions that are asked in essay, section A and section B. You will find one question from politics. So you have an edge if PSIR is your parent optional. And you have a dominating presence in GS2. General Studies 2, paper 2. That is inevitable. Everyone has to study. And you also have a dominating force in paper 4 ethics because of this paper. So even apart from PSIR, you have edge in essay because you develop conceptual clarity in writing your general essay. Your essay will be more structured because of the new ideas that you develop. GS2 would be more resounding because you have grip on the concepts. And ethics is nothing but how to organize political life better. Political life itself originated in Socrates. Political theory itself originated under Socrates in terms of study of ethics. Politics is nothing but ethical life only. How to promote an ethical way of life. This is how it had its genesis. How to promote an ethical way of life. The genesis of political life. So ethics is also there. And it also influences economy. Because at least you will find economics paper is not just economics, it includes internal security, science and technology, disaster management. So your answer writing helps in internal security, a threat to the state security, and economics. And even with respect to geography and history, paper 1, there will be at least 1 or 2 questions on politics. So your understanding of the other general studies papers will also be different. That's the reason why every second year or every second year you will find PSIR students topping civil services examination. This year anthropology. Look into the previous years. In last 10 years, there will be at least 5 instances where PSIR topped it. Why? Because it influences your understanding of all other GS. Because everything is constituted with respect to your political life only. Can you think about economics in isolation? Thought process, I tell you. Irrespective of the domain. The student who secured 54 rank was computer science graduate from CBIT, Richa Kulkarni. And she took it in the first attempt. Right? It is not your ideas, whether you come from conservative background or liberal background. Because definitely everyone is influenced by their social origin. That is not easy to overcome. But when I say liberal, What exactly I mean by liberal, I also define. I said liberal is nothing but your freedom of the individual, how you think. Liberalism believes that every individual has the ability to excel in life. And same thing, I think you also have the ability to excel in life. Only thing is you need to put the right effort. Focus on reading. Right? And if you are serious about this paper, throw your smartphones. Stay away from any communication as far as possible. And have focused attention. Highly focused attention. Even if you are isolated at least for 6 months, that's fine. Because there should not be any distraction. If required to maintain communication, use that Nokia, small one. Without any internet, that's ideal. And stay focused, readings 8 to 8 hours more than enough. Sleep at least 8 to 9 hours. That revives your energies. Eat good food. Relax. Take a walk. That's all. No continuous. Don't read continuously. Read as much as you absorb. Leave the rest. Take a walk. Spend time, but be in positive environment. Don't jelly around with friends who discourage you. If you keep yourself positively, you can easily succeed in first attempt. Right effort. I don't say spend 24 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours reading, 2 hours writing. 2 hours writing is mandatory. If you don't maintain writing, you cannot succeed in this paper. You don't find anyone passing this paper without practicing writing. That's the reason why in the beginning I said this is not a test of your IQ, but test of your hard work. How efficient you are. How good you are in writing. So you need to constantly write. Whichever optional you choose, writing is to be there because you have morning one, afternoon one. Morning you'll go and take 9 to 12. Paper 1 GS. Afternoon you will have politics. No reasonable test can ever test your competence in such a way. If I am taking the exam in your place, I cannot come out of that hangover of first paper for at least 3 to 4 hours. Because you will be absorbed. And how do you expect 2 o'clock go and take another paper with 2 hours break? And get into a different frame of mind. That's the reason I said it is not a test of your IQ. Test of your ability to vomit. How successful you are in vomiting. So to vomit, you need to continuously have practice of writing. Because it cannot be a test of your reasoning. It is only a mechanical test. Hard work. Practice. Go and fill the pages and come. Mechanical. If you are focusing in terms of comprehending, understanding, then it is of no use. Because it absorbs. The more you read, the more absorbing it becomes. Then you cannot come out of that hangover. That's the reason why many students who read exceptionally well, they are good in the subject. But why they fail to clear mains? Because they fail to come out of that hangover in the next paper. Even your brain needs break. And after that they give 3 to 4 days break, then have your optional. Instead they can have every day one paper. Nobody is complaining. Even UPSC found it acceptable. If someone complains, then they will rethink having one paper every day. That's genuine. At least you can come out of it, relax, then think about the other paper. What is this? Do you think is it possible? 3 hours paper, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon? For any sane individual, with the ability to think and write? Impossible. That's only possible when you practice hard work of vomiting the answers. Then only it is possible. And if you only rely on hard work, then it's also a challenge. Because sometime back, if you go through the question paper, sometime back they asked a question. Compare Rawls' theory of justice with the Greek's theory of justice. You may be prepared in vomiting what appears on Rawls, but you may not be prepared to vomit on comparison. Got it? Compare Rawls' theory of justice with the classical theory of justice. Both are different. Rawls' theory of justice is focused in terms of individual freedom, whereas classical theory of justice is moralizing agent. So two different things. If you want to prepare, vomiting will not help you. Reasoning. So that's the reason why I said the pattern of the exam itself to be faulted it. Not your ability to comprehend. Because this is not a high standard, it's a graduation standard. Jargon will help you to realize what is there. That's the reason why those who subscribe to this paper, I always suggest them to come to the class with previous year's question bank. There is one printed book, topic wise. Topic wise they are given from 91 to 2022. First topic, what are the questions that appeared? Go through the questions, you yourself will find comfort. Right? So anything within the class you are free to ask. And by the time we complete the paper, you are convenient with all the jargon. Without jargon, there won't be any paper. And this jargon is not so complicated, and I have already introduced you briefly with respect to the ideas that the paper deal with. Starting with the idea of state to starting with the idea of an ideology. How politics as raw material is used to develop or construct new political arrangements. Ideology. Yeah, current affairs, but you cannot go, current affairs cannot ignore the concepts. If you understand concept well, you develop your own framework. Ideology helps you in terms of developing a framework. And every current affair does not come out of vacuum. Every current idea is part of a paradigm, is part of a framework. Right? Go through the papers. Buy a paper and look into the questions. Topic-wise, what is the trend that they are asking? What are the questions that they are asking? Right? To what extent a non-social science graduate can think about it. This paper only demands reading of newspapers, essential. Because without which you cannot be identified with public life. Right? So think as a commonsensical, not in terms of academic. Why Jagan Mohan Reddy is promoting welfare every month? Commonsensical. What could be the idea behind? Is it genuinely to help the people to come out poverty, or he is trying to promote a vote bank? Commonsensical. I am not telling you to be an academic research. Why almost every month he is spending 5 to 10,000 crores in terms of freebies? Commonsensical, not academic. That is what you are expected to. That's what I said. This is where you get misleaded. The answer is never different, but only difference is way forward. Depending upon the question. Right? If the question is illustrate, if you or if you are trying to write differently, it will not fetch you marks. What the question reads. Does it define? Does it ask you to define? Does it ask you to describe? That is, ask you to analyze how the question is framed based on that. Right? Not for every question you provide a definition. This is half-baked understanding of the subject. Where they say differently. What differently you will write? You wanted to provide definition for every question? You give a definition when asked. When they say define, you give a definition without which your answer is incomplete. Then follow it in terms of elaborating the definition and conclude it with a way forward. Way forward is essential in this paper because you have the freedom. You have the freedom to express. The word is same thing, the jargon. You don't import any new jargon. Whatever the concepts that are already there, that is part of your jargon. State is part of your jargon. The theoretical perspectives of the state, liberal, neoliberal, plural, post-colonial, feminist, Marxist, they are all jargons only. And you should know who is the liberal thinker of state and who is the critic of the liberal theory. That's enough. You are not doing an academic research. So for all liberal critique, you find Marxism. Because both are polar opposites. Similarly, justice, Rawls' theory of justice, critique of Rawls' theory, communitarian, because Rawls stood for individual justice. Equality. What is equality? Why political equality is so important in the modern times? Because political equality guaranteed one man, one vote. So even whether you are PhD or whether you are a chaiwala, everyone has an equal opportunity to become the Prime Minister. Political equality, irrespective of your educational background. That is what political equality is. Right? So jargon is not something beyond this.
Very broad. They should be actually strong.
You always confine yourself to the concept. Try to understand the concept. That's the reason why I said what is democracy you should know. And what are the challenges to democracy. Limit yourself. You are not going research, in-depth research. So focus on what is democracy and challenges to democracy. Similarly, what is equality, what is political equality, what is formal equality or legal equality. Because this is something that is haunted every now and then. Because societies have become multicultural with globalization. Even European societies have become multicultural. And along with multiculturalism, there is xenophobia. XENO. Xeno means fear of the foreigner. So this is where they have become increasingly majoritarian. So when you have a majoritarian society, definitely it will have impact on minorities. So the question of equality arises. Otherwise, equality is formally recognized in all constitutions, but in practice are the majority privileged over the minority. Commonsensical only. Don't look in terms of academic. How you understand it. To substantiate it, you pull out one example or you pull out one definition. That's the reason why I said this paper needs not more than 1 month. If you understand the concept, you are master of this paper. Go through the previous year's questions.
To political structure, how deep are we going into the topics of society?
You should know what rights are. That's the reason why I said rights are socially recognized. If society does, because they are not going in depth, but they are asking questions with respect to case laws. They are not testing your depth, but they are testing your wider understanding, application part. So Supreme Court judgments, Keshavanand Bharti. So what is the impact of the judgment? Section A part, this is what I said. I start with approaches as the syllabus suggests. And many, I believe, start from the reverse, Western thought, including Shubhra Ranjan. But my way of teaching is the way that is prescribed by the UPSC. I start with approaches and I classify approaches into three: classical, modern, and contemporary. I identify the finer points in classical, finer points in modern, and finer points in contemporary, and how they are individually different. Right? What is a traditional approach, modern approach, and contemporary? How are they different? Simple. So in half an hour, I'll make you understand what it is. And every approach has a method. And what is a method? If approach is how to study, method is what to study. This is the first part. Follow it up with state. You know what state is. Liberals argue state is a neutral arbiter. Liberal understanding of state is a neutral arbiter. If there is conflict in society, state will act as an empire. Reconcile. Neutral arbiter. Marxists say state is a class state. It is not a neutral arbiter, but it is a partisan state. It will only protect the interest of the property class. Propertyless are ignored. Marx. If you know liberal, neutral arbiter, that applies to plural. Plural state also deals with the assumption that society is plural. So every plural society has competing interest. And the objective of the state? To reconcile. To reconcile the competing interest. State. Liberal. Marx, no, it is not competing interest, but it was only favoring propertied interest. Done with the state. And if it's a post-colonial state, we always talk about state, something to stand above the society. Because state is something new. Post-colonial. Society is traditional, state is modern. So state stands above the society. Because state is dictating us. We are part of a guided democracy. State tells us what to do and what not to do. Right? It is not society which is controlling the state. In post-colonial, because of weak societies, state that controls society. Societal aspects means not in the sociological dimension. We'll only talk in terms of to what extent society and state complement each other or contradict each other. Society and state complement or contradict. Right? Not beyond that. I am not going to look at how castes are formed in society, but I will only examine to what extent caste influences politics. I am not bothered about the origin of caste. My aspect is how caste influence politics. Here, how caste mobilization takes place in political environment. Because remember, politics is centered around only two aspects: reconciliation aspect, mobilization aspect. If you know this, you know politics. Politics is employed either for reconciliation. Reconciliation means where there are differences, where there is conflicting interest, or mobilization. How you mobilize popular support. Like our Ayodhya Ram Temple. Ayodhya Ram Temple was not a competing interest. Ayodhya Ram Temple was a mobilization effort. You have taken a Rath Yatra to mobilize popular public support. So through mobilization, you try to generate public support, politics. If not for reconciliation, for mobilization. Third world politics is always mobilizational politics. Western politics is always reconciliation politics. Raw material, it's something that is open. You have material to reorganize. That is where the dynamics. This is also politics. You are all with different viewpoints coming here is politics. And if you come with a particular understanding of a organized life, that is political. That is an ideology. You are all individual constituent of a society, having our own understanding, having our own priorities, your own self-interest. Similarly, everyone comes with their own self-interest. Right? So either the state has to reconcile the competing interest, self-interest, or it has to mobilize. It has to take everyone on its side and say, this is what we will do, mobilization, right? Or it has to reconcile. Beyond that, there is nothing the state can, in fact, do. In communism, state mobilizes. In capitalism, state reconciles. Yeah. So politics without state is also a possibility. So when you say politics without state, that means you believe in the ability of the individual to organize himself without any external intervention. The ability of individual to organize himself without any external intervention. If we all are able to lead a life of self-governing, ability to lead an organized life without interference, that is stateless society. But when we fail to, then we need some law to regulate us. When we fail to lead a self-regulating or self-governing mechanism, then we need law. Then we need someone to intervene, external, that is state. I consciously use this because I thought that helps you. Because raw material means if you have cement, steel and concrete or stone, what you will do? It's an input for an output. That means you are trying to give a form with that input. So you want to build a building with that input, a room with that input. So creating the room is what political life is an arrangement that you make with the raw material. Otherwise, this raw material can be used for anything. The raw material can be used to lay a road. The raw material can be used to raise a building, or the raw material can be used to construct a flyover, whatever you want. But the raw material, without raw material, you cannot have something to constitute. And we are all part of the raw material. We are all part of the raw material to organize into some sort of a political arrangement. Like bricks, sand, cement, and that crushed stone. It is invisible. Politics is abstract. You need to develop an imagination because it is not visible.
Knowledge or any?
Knowledge is not knowledge, it is opinion. There is nothing like knowledge. Social science is not knowledge because opinion. I may come with a different opinion. You cannot say that it is irrelevant. Every opinion is a valid opinion. There's a reason why I said you will have a model answer. So you cannot have model answers for specific particulars. So model answer will always be universals, general. So UPSC, PSIR questions will be general. Not subjective, but objective. Commonsensical. General in the sense, commonsensical, which everyone accepts. If it is specific to me, I may have a better understanding. If it is commonsensical, everyone can understand. So a model answer will always be commonsensical. That is the point I highlighted. So to make you understand what commonsensical is, if you have raw material, everyone has an equal opportunity to build it. But if you all come together to build something, that is political. Because nature itself has provided us with the raw material, that is our brain. We are all endowed with the ability to think. That's the raw material. The ability to think is the raw material. And if we all join together to create something concrete out of this raw material, out of these ideas, is political.
What is the difference between the power politics that we see, the concept of politics that we expect?
Power is central to politics. Why we are all part of politics? Because political life comes with the power to punish. Demonetization. After state enacted demonetization, do you have the freedom to keep demonetized notes at your disposal? Do you have? So what is preventing you? The fear of law. So politics comes with the power to punish. Yeah. So the power is always, that's the reason you joined late. I said power is identified either in terms of power over, that means domination, or power to empower. So if you look at the other dimension, it is domination. Economic power, political power, they are all the aspects of dominating power. But when you talk in terms of power to empower, I gave the example of Foucault. Power to empower is productive, not dominant power. Or Hannah Arendt. It's a productive power, a reformative power, a power to reform. Right? So look at the power from these broad dimensions, not in terms of socio-economic, political. Then it is dominant power. But you go beyond that classification of power, identify power as both power over, that means power to dominate someone, power to empower. So politics is both. On one side, we have power to empower. On the other side, power over. Without power over, you cannot reconcile the conflicting interest. Without the power to punish, you cannot reconcile the conflicting interest. State should have that authority to punish. Otherwise, we can be part of stateless society. If we don't have any conflict, we are part of a stateless society. As long as we have self-interest to govern, if everyone comes with their own individual self-interest, it will always lead to competition. And to regulate the competition, you need a law. And that is where state is. So state is not necessary. That's the reason why Marx says we were part of a society where state did not exist. Because society is prior to the state. Then why did state come? Marx argues state has come only with the invention of private property. Prior to private property, there was no state because we are all part of a collective life, self-governing community on moral principles. But what was the necessity for state? When property was invented. So when will the state disappear? When property is abolished. You abolish property, there is no conflict in society. Because all social evils are identified to private property, according to Karl Marx. You abolish it, there is no conflict. So we don't need state. Even liberals argue that progressively humans have the ability to self-govern. This is the idea of state. Yes, your question.
We differentiate exam point of view and learning this subject regarding concept.
So that's the reason why previous year's question paper in hand will help you with each concept. What the pattern is and how to understand the concept. No confusion. No confusion from 1990 to 2023. And paper 1 is mostly repetitive questions. Paper 1 is mostly repetitive. There is no confusion at all. Same thing, pattern. You understand the pattern, what they are asking. You are not going beyond the concept. You are writing your answer at best in 150 words or 200 words. In 150 words means 3 paragraphs. In first paragraph, depending upon the question, you are trying to define it. Then elaborate it. How will you write? You will write the first sentence, then elaborate it in a paragraph. This is normal way of writing. That's the reason why if you read all the first lines of a book, first line of each paragraph of a book, there will be a continuity. You will complete a book in 1 hour. Read only the first line of each paragraph of every book. Because what follows is an explanation of that. So if you are linking all the first lines of a book, right, you will finish reading a book in 1 hour. And you will also develop a fair idea of what the book deals with. Because you are able to link all the first lines of each paragraph. That's a continuity. You are able to understand what the book in fact represents. You don't have to read it again. Go into the paragraph when you fail to understand what that first sentence is. Try this. You will master reading books in no time. Because that helps you in maintaining connectivity, linking the ideas. Instead, if you start reading the depth, you will find bored after 2 pages, 3 pages, you leave it. Read only the first line. How you write, same thing is practiced there. When you write an answer, you don't write in terms of points, 1, 2, 3, 4. Usually when you write in terms of paragraphs. So 3 to 4 paragraphs. So a small introduction to the basic question. Read the question 2 times. Hit the center part of the question. Hit the center part of the question, your answer. Then elaborate it in next 2 points, next 2 paragraphs. Give a way forward where you are free to quote in way forward. You have the freedom to quote if you know someone who already talked about it. Because there are no conclusions. There are no conclusions. So it is only way forwards. So conclude the way forward with any particular quotation that attracts you. This is how answers are written. And be specific with respect to international politics, how it is advantage to India. So whatever you write, your focus is how it is advantage to India. As a future bureaucrat, you cannot be critical about your own government or state. So write it from the point of view of the advantage to India. Paper 1, you have limited freedom because there is too much of literature. Paper 2, you are absolutely free. Absolutely free to express the way you want. Anyone else?
I'm a social science student. For example, I have studied the degree. Years after this.
There's not much difference. In academics, one concept, you can write a thesis, PhD thesis. Here we are not bothered about that. We are not bothered about the debates that go on. Our understanding is what the concept is and how to apply it. It is like applied science. Application of the concept to your own understanding. Right? But without understanding the concept, you cannot write. So you are not going into the debates of each and every concept. That's academic work, where you are doing some serious research. Our concern is this is democracy. What I said, classical democracy thought it is protective and developmental. Democracy will help you learn political realism or political rationality. Protecting your property, democracy. Modern, pluralist and elitist. That is how we practice democracy. We have multiple political parties, plural. Elitist, every political party is represented by a set of elite. They are the ones at the helm of the affairs. So you have limited choice. But still we call it democracy. Right? So democracy in fact means self-rule. But what we are practicing is elitist and pluralist. Tomorrow after Chandrababu Naidu, it would be Lokesh Babu. Not someone commoner. Understand? But still we consider it democracy, even though it is a hereditary family rule. Because we have high value and respect for family. So having a family rule is not undemocratic in our society. Not only in means not in India, but in Asia. You find all family centric. Bhuttos, Jias, right? Sheikh Hasinas, they're all family hereditary. Part of our society, because family is a highly respected institution. Yeah, still. Look into the questions. I'm here to. Please. That would be more fruitful.
Described as an attempt towards social revolution.
Indian society was a hierarchical society, and we continue to remain hierarchical even today, because we are not equal. If we were equal society, then there wouldn't have been honor killing.
What would be the model?
That's what I'm telling. So India is a stagnant society, hierarchical society. So we wanted to become an equal society. So Constitution is a revolutionary document to help create our society into an equal society. Are we not a hierarchical society? Because Indian society is dominated by caste hierarchy. Right? So Constitution, objective of the Constitution is to help realize this society to form into equal society. That is where revolution is. For this, we have Granville Austin talking about a pyramid. The base of the pyramid, the middle of the pyramid, and the top of the pyramid. The base of the pyramid is fraternity, unity and integrity. Middle of the pyramid is promoting equal liberty. Top of the pyramid is social equality. So to realize social equality, you need to promote fraternity. You need to promote fraternity. That means you need to promote unity and integrity within the society. Then you need to promote equality, liberty. Right? When both are realized, then you realize social equality. So give the quotation. Constitutional expert, Granville Austin. Talk about the pyramidal power. This is how the Constitution is identified as a revolutionary document. And he talks about seamless interaction. Seamless means continuous interaction between fraternity, liberty, and equality. Only when it is realized, society will be transformed. Without any one of them, you cannot have an equal society. Without liberty, you cannot have equal society. Without fraternity, you cannot have equal society. What is fraternity? Respect the dignity of the individual. It is not brotherhood or sisterhood. Fraternity means respect the dignity of the individual. If you have respect for the dignity of the individual, that means you are promoting an equal society. Got it? So you have 100 ways of writing that answer. I only gave one. You have different ways of writing that answer. Constitution as a revolutionary document. Here, yes, article, you can quote article 14, 19, 21. How Constitution identified these articles essential for protecting the basic dignity of the individual. Constitution as a revolutionary document means to promote the dignity of the individual. How the dignity of the individual can be protected. So we have fundamental rights guaranteed under article 14, 19, 21, 25, freedom of conscience, dignity. If I am born into a Muslim, it is not my fault. I cannot be victimized. I should also have equal right. That is the objective of the Constitution. If I am born into a tribal, I cannot be excluded. I have got every right to be part of the inclusive society. That's the objective of the Constitution. So you have hundreds and thousands of ways of writing answer. But if you wanted to, as you said, are there any standard? Court Granville asked him, pyramidal, where he argues that fraternity, equality and liberty helps in promoting social equality or social justice. Social justice, social equality or social revolution. All these are one and the same. How to create a equal society. Otherwise, we are hierarchical society. Even today, we are hierarchical after 75 years of Constitution. You don't have intercaste marriage. If you have intercaste marriage, it is leading to honor killing. Presence of honor killing is a significant aspect to highlight that society is not equal. If you respect every individual with respect to his dignity, then every society is equal. Got it?
Different type of writing.
Keep writing whichever way you know. If you are good in liberalism, practice liberal writing. If you are good in the counter Marxism, write answers in the Marxist perspective. But some perspective, some clarity. Right? Follow some clarity. This is needed in every subject. You need to develop some clarity to write a paper. Whether you choose liberal, conservative, fascist, whatever you want. If you want to write from fascism, write fascism. Clarity. Without subscribing to some perspective, you cannot write this paper. Of all the papers, liberal is easy because you are only talking about individual freedom. How to promote individual freedom and how to protect private property. These are central themes of liberalism. So how to promote individual freedom means state intervention should be minimum in society and economy. State should not excessively interfere into society. Like Uniform Civil Code. It shall not. If it means, that means it is violating the freedom of the individual. State shall not excessively interfere into society or into economy. Is liberal because your property should be protected. And anything other than liberal is the opposite of liberal. So opposite of liberal is where individual is insignificant, collective is significant, community is significant. Right? Community realizing its potential is significant. This is not a very challenging paper. If you understand those concepts, the paper is easy. If you know what state is, why we need that. I said there are two ways of looking at state as a neutral arbiter. That means state is impartial. Everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. You all come with disputes. So I am trying to solve it as a judge. Neutral arbiter. So this is reconciliation. Otherwise, state is mobilizer. State is mobilizing. That means state is partisan. State is either partisan towards a community. State is partisan towards a class. Got it? Very simple. It's not a very challenging. If you know these basics, that's all. You are writing your paper. Look at the questions. Whatever I gave you, look at the questions you will find. Because there is nothing beyond that. That is being understood. Whether state is a reconciliation state, as a judge sitting in judgment, right? Like yesterday I saw a social media message. I think it is wrong. There it said the Prime Minister Modi immediately wants all Hindus to vote for UCC. I don't think that has come because that means state is taking sides. And it also had that Muslims, 4 crore Muslims have casted their vote, 2 crores Christians have already given their vote against UCC. So let the Hindus in majority. That cannot come from the state. Because the idea of state is neutral arbiter. So that may be a false message making circulation. If it is true, then it is a mobilizing state. If it is true, then the message is true, then it is a mobilizing state where state is trying to mobilize a particular community. This is state. Beyond that, there is no scope. If you understand this, you understand what state is, reconciliation or mobilization. In communist and post-colonial states, state is mobilizer. In liberal state, state is reconciler. Same justice. What is justice? What is justice? Because in philosophy, three things defy any definition. There is no definition. Justice, truth, and beauty. 2000 years over, there is no one single definition to these three ideas. There is no single definition to define what justice is. There is no single definition to define what truth is. And there is no single definition to define what beauty is. Because they are subjective. It is justice to give food to a man who is starving. But it is not justice to give food to someone who has a sumptuous meal. Right? If I go and eat bawarchi biryani and come out, then if you offer food, it is not justice. It is justice if you offer food before I eat at bawarchi. Got it? So justice is subjective. So there is no single definition what justice is. Similarly, there is no single definition to explain what truth is. Similarly, there is no single definition to explain what beauty is. There's a reason beauty holds in the eyes of the beholder. Subjective. They're all specific to a context. You cannot define them. Right? So not all concepts remain like that. Apart from justice, other concepts you can define. But when it comes to these three, they are truly subjective. You cannot generalize and say this is justice, or this is beauty, or this is truth. Apart from other things can be defined. Anything else? It all depends on your ability to write. If you are good in terms of expression, you can score more than 300. If you are little weak in your expression, you can score. If you are good in concept but weak in expression, 270. And if you are an average, 240. But don't expect very high marks from UPSC because they are under instructions not to award anything beyond 40%. If the paper answer is above average, they will award 50. If the answer is exceptional, 60. Only when the answer is exceptional, 6%, 6 out of 10. And that answer will be re-evaluated by another person. Whenever someone scores 6 out of 10, that answer needs to be re-evaluated. Average, 4. Little above average, 5. Exceptional, 6. If it is exceptional, the answer will be, or the script will be re-evaluated. Because I might be partisan in awarding the marks. So that's the reason why no one scores more than this. The topper, what was the topper score? I think 1100 change. Right? Out of? What was the total they gained? Because in that you set aside this personal interview. Take only the written part. Right? 500 plus 1250. 1750. Out of 1750, if you set aside the interview marks, it will be around 900. Those who qualify for interview, they secure around 790. So out of 1750, if it is 800 means how much? If it is 1600, 50% is 800. Out of 1750, 800 means around 40%. Right? So scoring depends on that. And definitely scoring if you are successful in vomiting. Why anthropology is so scoring? It's a test of your memory in physical anthropology. You have to by heart all that genetic codes. Paper 2 is social anthropology. Again, you come back to social science. And that's the reason why people who master vomiting, they succeed. But they fail in other GS papers. Clearing paper 1, 2, 3, 4 is a challenge because you cannot by heart all. And the one who secured third rank, it was her sixth attempt. That means you are preparing for 7 to 8 years. By then you have mastered something in memory. Clear? So there are optionals which help in terms of memorizing. But you find difficult in writing with respect to the general studies. So you need to maintain balance. So to maintain an overall balance, you need to master the concept. That's the only way. Master means not by heart, internalize. Internalize a concept in your own way, how you understand. What makes sense to you, liberty, justice, equality, fraternity and all. That's it. What makes sense to you, not what makes sense to others. That's more than enough. That helps in writing.
So how in the question?
Same way as the syllabus suggests. I go with the concepts, then come back to the thought. Because by then we know each concept. So that helps in easy understanding of the thought. But others, they come from reverse. I'm told, I don't know. I'm told they come from Western thought. Then come to approaches, reverse. But I follow this because this is how UPSC structured it. So instead of developing my own structure, I thought, even though at the cost of repeating, it helps in better internalizing the concept. When you go to thought, you are already comfortable with concept. Because even in thought, these are the same concepts that are repeated. How they use these concepts. That is how a political thought is developed. Right? I make you comfortable. Don't worry about that. But test is your own understanding, how you write. Right? How you express yourself is important, not how I teach. I teach to your satisfaction. That guarantee I can give you. You are free to interrupt any number of times till you are satisfied. But the question is how you express. It is not me who takes the exam. It is you. So attend the class every day. Come with that question bank. Right? Interrupt me 100 times. I will be most happy. If you don't interrupt me, then it becomes sedate. One-sided. Boring. Because we are dealing with something that deals with thinking. So it is productive if we both think together. Unproductive if only I think and you sit idle in the class. Okay? Thank you. All the best. We have already gone beyond the time by half an hour. Yeah, please.
Test series?
Test series I don't want to have because if I give you test series, then that shows I might ask the same thing. But instead you have the freedom to join anywhere. So that you can also test my understanding and your understanding. Right? That would be more appropriate. This is how I think. Now, if there are many students, fine. But otherwise, I ideally suggest if you have test series outside, then that is also testing my understanding, your understanding. Objective way. Why remains subjective? What else you need? Not all answers once in a while. Not all answers once in a while. Those who are serious, definitely I can. Because once you take the test series, they will also give you their own opinions. You yourself will be a judge, right? Because there cannot be two different things altogether. Minor differences may arise, but the concept is concept. Got it? What is your name?
Writing these concepts.
Writing. Keep writing. Keep writing without having a book in hand. Develop your own ideas. Commonsensical ideas. That means ordinary day-to-day life thinking, not academic thinking, reading a book and writing. Commonsensical, that helps you. You only develop new ideas. Because all opinions, no opinion is created out of vacuum. Even opinions are formed out of interaction only. So you develop your common sense only out of interaction. Understand? So you're developing common sense means developing opinion. And that is what I want. So if you don't develop opinion, you don't interact. You cannot develop ideas in vacuum. Opinions are not formed in vacuum. You form an opinion either in support of my understanding or in criticism of my understanding. That means opinions are only formed in interaction, not outside interaction. What is your name? Deepak. Good. Anyone else? Max 4 months. And only Monday to Friday. I don't take on Saturday, Sunday. And every day it would be around 2.5 hours session. Neither I wanted to tax you, not tax myself. Because this needs parallel thinking, parallel imagination, abstract. Fine? Anyone else? There is no standard. NCERT also do. 10+2. IGNO material is also wonderful. 2021 published. Exceptionally good material. Or the basics like OP Goba for concepts. Or if you are a little more innovative than Raju Bhargava. He was my tutor in JNU. Raju Bhargava. He taught me Western thought. So you can have Raju Bhargava also. Or these are the standards. Most people read OP Goba. New to this subject. But OP Goba is circular, repetitive. But still fine, it gives you an understanding. And I also have some PDFs, all these books. If you want, I'll share. Bhargava have PDFs which I can share. Provided if you are interested in reading. One standard book you have to read. Otherwise you cannot prepare for this exam. Read IGNO material also. But standard, that's a standard. Or any standard book. For Indian politics, I suggest one Chakravarti. He was former UPSC member. He has written many books on Indian government and politics. Bipan Chakravarti. BIPAN, because North Indians, they don't pronounce V. Then that's good. Fair enough. Lose it. It's like a essay reading. As far as our paper is concerned. And you can also fall back on your Bible, Lakshmikant. Bible Lakshmikant, then Bipan Chakravarti. And for paper 2, comparative politics, whatever I teach in the class, that's more than enough. But still, if you want, J.C. Johari. Then international politics, option is left to you. Either you can go with Bailey Smith or Haywood, Andrew Haywood, global politics. Bailey Smith is also very informative, easy to understand. Then Indian politics, David Mellon, Srinath Raghavan edited book. Read that. And come with some newspapers. Newspaper articles like Happy Mon Jacob, Suhasini Haidar, they pen regularly. And also some of these are former national security advisors like M.K. Narayan, who pen columns regularly on security dimension. Right? Dowell doesn't write, but Jaishankar does. So you can read Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister. Because questions will be contemporary. There are also repetitive questions, particularly with respect to the theory part. Section A. Section A is repetitive. Section A, last topic, global commons, like terrorism, environment, democracy, human rights. You'll get one question. That is contemporary. Contemporary. Other UN system or regional groups, right? Or WTO, IMF, World Bank, WTO, Cold War, they're all repetitive questions. Global commons, you'll get one current affairs question. And India specific, India's neighborhood, all historical only. Then India and developed world, historical only. India and global south, historical only. You'll get questions on India's foreign policy, recent. The changes that are taking place in West Asia. And after US leaving West Asia, to what extent India and China can play an important role in West Asian politics if they join together. If they remain adversaries, what would be its fallout? In either way, how it is advantage to India. India specific, you cannot talk about India specific international politics without China, whether in the neighborhood or in the extended neighborhood. You have China to contain. So it is, India's foreign policy is always Chinese specific. So the nature of questions are also similar to that. Scramble to Africa. Even though we had established relations with Africa for a very long period, still we went to Africa only after China went. Having connections, cultural, civilizational, non-alignment, Afro-Asian solidarity, still we moved to Africa only after China made its deep inroads. Latin America, West Asia. So somewhere we are behind, trying to catch up. So every situation has to be invariably address China. And we also have to talk about whether India is a hegemon in the region. Hegemon means a dominant power in neighborhood. Because that is how India is perceived. India is perceived as a dominant power ever since Bangladesh is created, ever since Sikkim is annexed. The neighbors find that insecurity. Neighbors find insecurity in terms of India-neighborhood relations. So to pacify that, we had I.K. Gujral doctrine, non-reciprocity in neighborhood. So he wanted to promote India not as a big brother, but a caring brother. But India is a power. That's a fact. So we are not a dominant brother, but a caring brother. Neighborhood. Extended neighborhood, we are in competition with China everywhere. Right? So mostly your answers would be Chinese-centric. China-centric, either in neighborhood or extended neighborhood, because of that string of pulse policy. China is everywhere. China is everywhere in the region in terms of its check diplomacy, the money, the surplus that China has, which has pushed all these neighboring countries into a debt trap. Sri Lanka is into a debt trap. Maldives is in debt trap. Pakistan is in debt trap. Nepal, right? Only country which escaped the debt trap is Bangladesh. So because of China. So every aspect of neighborhood or extended neighborhood, invariably you encounter China. Right? So if you develop broad analysis, the paper is not a challenge. But in fact, the paper gives you new insights. And the way I teach, definitely it brings change in your understanding. You will not be the same person after the course. This guarantee I can give you. Right? Your understanding will be completely different. At least you will start thinking, questioning, not accepting anything on face value. Igniting thinking itself is a big challenge. That I will definitely do. Okay? Thank you. All the best.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Oh, so my morning about
Thank you.